Hi everyone, my name is Jess, and this week we'll be taking a look at my story. There are definitely going to be parts that it feels like I'm glossing over or not going into depth on. This is because I really want to tackle them in depth as their own video later on. I want to be open and honest about this entire process, so that means giving some topics the level of detail that they deserve. Before I begin, I want to say a quick hi to everyone that's come from my previous channel. It's nice to see you again. If you found this channel by now, you kind of are probably aware of everything that we went through, but here's a look at that in some more detail. So my name is Jessica. I am 28 years old. I came out to myself in October of 2017, and I started transition in November of 2017. So this is still very, very recent for me. So let's start right from the very beginning. So I was born in 1990. Even from the beginning, at a very early age, sort of 3, 4, 5, I can remember having thoughts of, I want to be a girl. For me, there are two very specific instances of this that stand out in my mind as being very memorable, even now. Both of these were at the age of around about sort of 5 or so. There was a girl who lived next door, and I can remember very intensely wanting to be her. This strong feeling of jealousy that she was who I wanted to be instead of myself. I vaguely remember at one point this memory of writing down on a piece of paper that I wanted to be a girl for a day just to see what that was like, and putting it under my pillow and just praying for some kind of cosmic magic to happen that would let that be the case. Obviously it never did, but I can remember wanting that. At another time there was an assembly where one of the older year groups were performing a short piece from a play that they were doing as part of the school. So there was this girl in this pink dress playing her part, and I can remember just thinking that she looked amazing and wanting that for myself. I wanted to be her. I had absolutely no idea what all of this meant at the time. I just figured it was nothing, so I didn't really say anything. I just carried on being jealous of them and sneaking off occasionally to use the girls' toilets when no one was in there, because it was just something I wanted to do and I couldn't put my finger on why. Even at that age, I didn't really talk about any of this. I don't really know why initially I didn't want to talk about it. I know when I was older it was definitely shame, but at the time I can't remember whether I was ashamed of it or I just didn't think it was important to say. I didn't know how to say it, or I just didn't want to. I don't really recall specifically what one of those that it was. I borrowed a pair of my sister's tights once because I wanted to see what that was like. I think I was about 5 or 6 or 7 here. I made the mistake of telling someone that I'd done this, one of my peers. Unfortunately, it spread, and kids at that age are fairly cruel about anyone who's slightly different. They made fun of me for that for quite a while. Fortunately, we were quite young, so we were all kids and we didn't have great attention spans, so everyone moved on and we all sort of forgot about it. But that really, I think, affirmed and cemented my shame about all of this. It was immediately known to me, don't share this. Don't share these things that you're feeling. Don't share these things that you want to do, because people are gonna make fun of you and they are gonna laugh. So I didn't say anything. Those feelings of wanting to express femininity stayed with me though, and I did do things to try and validate that sense of wanting to express being feminine. There was just this voice internally telling me, try on that dress, try on those heels. Everyone's out, put on that eyeliner. I honestly think after a while I was doing the cliche transgender woman thing of just assuming that every guy thought this way. They don't, and that it didn't mean anything when it did. I hid all of this so much, even going so far as to do stupid things like tucking the bows of my laces down the sides between my foot and the shoe so that they wouldn't show on the top. I did this so that my shoes wouldn't have bows on, because bows are for girls, and if anyone sees that, they might work out how I felt about wanting to be a girl. I didn't trust myself to be able to lie or convincingly play that off, so I did everything I could to even avoid any conversation of gender. That's so stupid looking back at it. Everyone has bows on their shoes, but I was so paranoid and worried that I'd be the one that they'd pick on for it and that they would work it out. I was being over suspicious and paranoid because I felt like I had to be. Avoiding things like getting my face painted or dressing up or playing pretend. They were all things girls did, stereotypically. So I didn't want to do them because I was just so afraid that someone would work it out. Nobody can know was the single solid persistent thought process. Don't tell anyone, don't get found out. Once I hit puberty, I got incredibly sad. I didn't really understand it, And from the outside, I'm sure it just looked like ordinary hormonal moodiness. I remember my mum had given me a book about puberty, what to expect, the changes, and just being obsessed with the women's section in it. Looking at the changes that it was outlining and thinking, wouldn't that be nice? I want that to happen to me. I was hoping again that some sort of miracle would come along and give me the right puberty, the one that seemed more appealing, the one that I wanted to happen. But I couldn't put my finger on what it was. I labeled it as everything other than what it really was, which was just jealousy and longing. At this point in my life, I still can't even recall being consciously aware that trans people exist. I don't think I've heard so much as a conversation or overheard people talking about us. At this time, I don't know what trans people are. I like to think that at this point I'd known about women like me, that I'd been able to say, yes, this is who I am, this is what fits, this is the person that I need to be. But I know realistically, I think I would have been too scared and too ashamed to speak up. I was just this weird kid that should be ashamed. Deserved to be ashamed of who I was, that everything I was feeling was wrong. I still didn't understand it could be something real and was something that other women had gone through. The thought that this was just who I am and that was nothing to be ashamed of just hadn't occurred to me. It still wasn't in my head at all that this should be something that I should tell someone. This is definitely where my depression really started. At 11, I had what I guess would be described as suicidal ideation, contemplating and thinking about ending my life. I made light of it, made reference to it to my peers, but never anyone important, never an adult that would take it seriously. But it was there. I didn't try to act on it. I still just had this intense desire to not be, for everything to just stop. I didn't want to have to keep being this person that I didn't want to be, and I didn't know why. I didn't know why I didn't want to be me, but I just didn't. That's all I knew. Fortunately, I never acted on that. Unfortunately, I didn't tell anyone either. I really do regret that. I've always felt like a very closed off person. And I think that was a barrier that stopped me taking that seriously and wanting to get help. I figured it was just puberty, just hormones. And then after that, as I got a little bit older, I had terrible acne, which I hated so much. And I thought it was that. I thought that was why I kept feeling depressed, because I just didn't like the way my skin looked. I didn't like the way I looked for normal teenage reasons. The kind of cis reasons that you have. Oh, I feel like I'm a bit fatter than I need to be, or my skin's not very good, or all of these things. I didn't realize it was tied to something much deeper. After the acne was gone, unfortunately I'd taken Accutane or Roaccutane to get rid of that. One of the side effects from that is depression, and that can persist for quite a long time after you stop taking it, apparently. So I just assumed it was that. When it was still with me, even though I didn't hate my spots anymore, I just figured that I'd been left with this sort of depression and that it was still nothing that needed discussing. I didn't see it as a red flag, so I just sort of normalized it, learned to live with it. This is what my life is. This is who I am as a person. I am someone who is occasionally depressed. It never occurred to me that I kept feeling worse and worse as different parts of my puberty progressed. When my peers were doing things like bragging about their tiny, pathetic beards that we were all starting to grow, I put effort into hiding mine at a time when that would have made me cooler, or had people go, wow, you can grow a real beard, because puberty hit me hard and fast. I was trying to hide it. I didn't want people to know. I've never enjoyed having a beard, but I just didn't want it, so I tried to hide it. Didn't do a great job. I have very sensitive skin, couldn't hide very often, so it was stressful having to grow this beard you didn't like. For all of secondary school, I think I spent a lot of time just wanting to be someone else. There's a photo from this time that I think really summed up me from this period. I mean, look, I'm so angry at the camera. This isn't really just an expression that I'm pulling for this photo. That's probably an honest representation of how I really felt inside a lot of the time as a teenager. Just being angry at the world and angry at things and angry at my family and not really knowing why. So we move on a little bit. I'm sort of nearing the end of secondary school, about to go to college, and I remember becoming sort of vaguely aware of transgender people, but not from very good sources. From places like 4chan, an online internet forum that I browsed a lot as a young kid. Well, not young, but teenager. It was not good representation, and it did absolutely nothing to mitigate any sense of shame that I was feeling about potentially trying to identify like that. By this time, I've sort of suppressed and tried to move on from the things I was doing as a younger child. I'm starting to forget some of the feelings that I was having. I wanted to actively not remember. I was trying not to think about this. There is one thing that sticks out from this time for me, and that was seeing a thread on transgender people, reading about their hormone replacement therapy, which they were making fun of, obviously. And I just remember thinking, I wish I was transgender so that I could transition. Such an astonishingly unaware phrase, thinking that being transgender was something that you were told that you were. Either you were or you weren't, and if nobody told you that you were, then you weren't. So it wasn't a possibility. So I didn't explore it any further. It was just another thing to repress and forget. I had my first serious girlfriend at about 17 or so. Through her, I met a great group of people, and this is one of the turning points where things really started to shift for me. Up until then, I was maintaining this fairly sort of stereotypical idea of what masculinity was and trying to sort of act that out. I'd definitely by this point suppressed away a lot of the feelings that I'd had as a child, but I was still avoiding some of these stereotypically feminine things that I'd perhaps wanted to do but not felt able to do. But one of these friends was a guy who was much more comfortable with expressing those elements than I ever thought was possible. He had a girlfriend and he was just quite secure in being who he was. He had no issues doing things that in my mind weren't what a stereotypical man did. He was listening to the music he wanted to listen to, saying that he liked things that he liked, regardless of their sort of associated gender role. Seeing the way he was accepted by our friendship group gave me the confidence to also start expressing that femininity that I wanted to, in very, very small ways, but huge personal steps given my previous relationship with femininity. This was stuff like listening to pop music. It sounds quite small. I like to joke with people that know me now that my music taste is that of a 14-year-old girl. I've been doing this long before I came out as transgender, but initially it wasn't. I was listening to rock and metal and heavier things because I felt like that's what men did, and so that's what I should listen to if I didn't want any awkward questions. It was the first step away from this you should hide everything feminine that you like because otherwise people are going to work it out kind of mentality that was keeping me from doing things that I really enjoyed. So I move on to university, the relationship ends, but I'm left with more of a confidence, just a little more comfortable in expressing a less overtly masculine persona. I still have a slight internal aversion to some feminine things that I can't really put my finger on. I'm not consciously thinking about it so much anymore, but I'm just like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do this peel-off face mask that everyone is doing right now. Because even though it was a group of guys, I figured I would be the one that they would single out. And while not consciously aware of it, it just sort of led to a, no, actually, I'd rather not do that. But I break through a lot of it and I start doing these things that make me happier, and it's quite good for a while. Gradually feeling more comfortable with these minor but public expressions of the person that I am and not so much this idea of who I thought I was but wasn't really. The voice from my childhood telling me to present femininely and put on that dress and wear those heels has gone quiet for quite a while. I think partly just due to a complete lack of opportunity. I lived in a house with 4 other people and didn't have a lock on my door. There was no privacy. I knew I didn't have any opportunity, and I think that that's why it wasn't bothering me so much during this time, because I didn't feel like I'd have had a choice. There were some things from this time that sort of stand out to me now. I'd met and become friends with 2 beautiful, incredible women that I became very close friends with, and who always just treated me like one of the girls. Not because anyone suspected anything, but just because that's who they were and that's who I was, and that's how our friendship formed. We were just close and I was just always one of them. After a night out once, one of them had texted me in the morning, starting with, "Hey girl." And at the time I screenshot that message and I kept it on my phone until the phone broke and I lost it. And it made me happy every time I saw it, and so sad when I lost that screenshot. I was being validated and enjoying that validation, but I couldn't have told you why I liked that so much. Now it's because she was just treating me like the woman I was but didn't realize at the time. Midway through uni in 2011, I start a new relationship. Things go well for a long time. I grow a lot as a person. We leave uni. I graduated with not a great degree, but a degree nonetheless. I get a job and things are going well. I still get periodic bouts of depression, mostly during the winter, so I assume it's like seasonal affective disorder or something. I go to the doctor a few times and he just sort of says, get some self-help books, which I don't do, but pull myself out of it and cope with the feelings instead. That did make it a tough time for our relationship though. We get through it and the suicidal ideation isn't as strong or as present as when I'd been feeling very depressed as a child, which is fortunate, but it's still not great. I'm still not a great person to be around during those moments. It's quite intense. We're jumping forward a little bit here, but after a couple of years, we move out from sharing places with friends and get our own place. And this is where everything changes for me. That quiet little voice from my childhood that was like, try on that dress, try on those heels, that had been quiet for so long, was now undeniably loud, practically screaming at me. It starts with borrowing my girlfriend's clothes when she's out at work. Initially, I think it's just cross-dressing for fun, but it felt like a compulsion, I think is probably the best way to describe it. This satisfies the voice for a little bit, but it's eventually not enough. And the more I do it, the more I want to do it. I try not doing it, as I'm still feeling quite ashamed every time that I do. I really try to stop and say, nope, look, this is the last time, you're not doing this again. But weeks or months later, I'd be right back at it. I couldn't stay away from it. Eventually in 2015, I decide I need my own clothes and that I'm gonna go full femme for the first time. I had a trip to London for work to go visit some trade show. After that was done, I left, I snuck off to Oxford Street and I spent a couple of hours just shopping. Completely alone, where I was fairly confident no one would recognize me, and it gave me the confidence to buy my own first full set of clothes. A black dress, a blue cardigan, some tights. I'd bought a wig off Amazon, and I set a date in my mind when I knew my girlfriend wasn't going to be home, that I would have the whole place to myself, and I was like, right, that's the day. So on the day, I steal some of my girlfriend's makeup, I put on my dress, I put on my wig, I do my makeup poorly, but I step back and I look at myself. And I'm so happy in a way that felt entirely unique at the time. And looking back, it's because things finally felt right. I was able to see myself the way I should be. There was a photo I took during this time of literally the first time going this far and getting this dressed up. And I spent hours looking for it for this video, but I can't find it. I deleted it in some bout of shame during this process. And I really regret that, because it's so obvious on my face how happy I am in that moment. I'm still someone I feel that doesn't feel very natural in front of a camera. When people are trying to take photos, I don't feel like I always know what to do. But in that photo, I was so unburdened and happy. I wish I still had that photo. That was a huge moment for me. At the time though, it scares me. I'm still so ashamed, and feeling that happy about it really scared me. So I took it all off. I said I wasn't gonna do it again for a while. And to make myself try and stick to it, I did things like growing a beard. I hated having a beard. I hated the way I looked in a dress with a beard. So to me, that was a good way to prevent myself from wanting to do this. This is a screenshot from a video. This isn't that specific time, but it's the kind of beard that I would grow. But I'd always get to a point where I couldn't not do it anymore. I couldn't not dress up. I couldn't not present femininely. So I'd shave off the beard. And when anyone asked, I'd be like, oh, it was just a whim. I just thought like it was time. I got bored of having the beard. But really it's because I shaved it off so that I could immediately go and put on my dress, go and put on my makeup, and just look at myself in the mirror. So I do this for a while. I think it's kind of just something I'm doing for fun, that it's just cross-dressing. So I join a forum to talk to people who I think are like me, and I need a name for my profile. So I picked Jessica. It's a name that I really liked, I liked referring to myself when I was dressed up as something. It made it sort of easier. And so this is February 2016 when I pick my name, what will eventually become my name. And I don't even come out to myself that I'm transgender until October 2017. I named myself before I knew I was transgender. That's just how clueless about all of this that I was. I'd picked a name, but I didn't realize yet that that was who I was. I have this distinct separation between myself, the cis man, and Jessica, as if she was just some character that I was playing, something wholly separate from myself. The online community never really clicks for me. I really craved normal visibility, and the sexualized nature of the site wasn't resonating with me at all. I just wanted her to be seen as a normal girl. This site just didn't fit with what I wanted. So I do things at this point like getting bolder, getting dressed and going outside, pushing my boundaries and my comfort zone. I do stupid, reckless things like going for walks late at night so that it would be dark and no one could see me as clearly, but that I could still have that present visibility of being seen as a woman. Something probably quite dangerous at the time, but I didn't care. I just needed that visibility. Throughout all of this time, we'd been sort of working on the channel, my partner and I, but we step up the content and start vlogging regularly in September 2016. During this time, I'm filming some of the vlogs in a very compressed nature. I'm saying, hi, here's what I had for breakfast. Here's 2 to 3 updates on what appears to be a multi-hour task. Here's what I'm having for lunch. Then catching up with my partner when she gets home and finishing out the vlog as normal. Except all the things I was filming were in a tiny window. I was filming an entire day's worth of vlog in the opening 15 minutes of the day so that I could put the camera down, get dressed up, present femininely for the rest of the day without having to worry that I'd be caught in a stray reflection or that someone would notice something. Even though I was under scrutiny from people watching what I was doing from my weekend, I still had to do this, so I worked out a way to keep it secret. I go to the German market in Southampton dressed up as a woman just to be seen and just to be in a crowd with other people and just to be part of that, but presenting as a woman. I was so scared. I was terrified. An older lady came up to me and needed to ask me something. I think it was directions, but she started with, "Excuse me, Angel, can you just..." But I couldn't say anything because of my voice. I felt like it would immediately give me away. So I just shook my head. But inside, I have this sudden rush of validation. She sees me and she sees me as a her. It felt amazing, so I couldn't say anything or I felt like I'd ruin it. But it doesn't matter. She takes a step closer and she says, "Oh, never mind, you're a man," and turns around and just walks away as fast as she can. This is devastating to me at the time. I go home in shame, I scrub the makeup off, I take off the dress, the wig, and I definitely cry for a bit. That whole interaction hurt so much. And looking back, that's a big sign to me now that something was up. Being identified as what at the time I thought I was, a cis man dressed as a woman, shouldn't have hurt as much as it did. After all, I thought she was correct, but it was because she'd ruined that moment of validation for me. But even so, I'm still clueless and I haven't put anything together. I don't even know that there is anything to put together. This is one of my favorite pictures from me at the time. Looking back at it, I see her there and I still can't believe that she doesn't know who she is. She doesn't even suspect that she might be transgender. She thinks she's just a cis man that likes doing this. But there she is in her lace front wig, in her floral dress, and just feeling so naturally happy. I, at this point, start considering telling my girlfriend. She likes Drag Race. We'd previously talked about, for the channel, having a video where she did my makeup, which at the time I'd vetoed because obviously someone on the internet would have worked it out. Some days when I'm packing away my things, I carelessly sort of leave something out, just tidy it away. Before she gets home or after she gets home, but before she notices it, I just sort of chicken out from the process because I'm still ashamed. And I don't want her to know. Eventually, one weekend in March 2017, she finds out anyway. She comes home early one day for lunch without telling me, and there's a bag of women's clothes, my new purchases from Primark, on the sofa. I know at this point I could lie, and I'm searching my brain for excuses, just something she'd believe. But I tell her because I think I know I need to. It's tough and a shock for her, for obvious reasons. She feels very betrayed that this had been going on and that I hadn't told her, that I'd been actively lying and keeping it from her. It's a really, really tough time for both of us. During the discussions, she asked me the fateful question, "Are you transgender?" And I pretty much immediately say no. Because of course I did. Of course I did that. I was still quite ashamed, and I still figured at this point that being transgender was something that you were told. Something that people told you about yourself and that you just already knew fully formed without having to think about it. And felt immediately weird about saying no. And I obsessed about that no for a day, a couple of days. Then I broke down in front of her and I said I didn't know what I was. I didn't know whether it was a yes. I didn't know whether it was a no. I didn't know who I was, but that just saying no out loud hadn't felt right to me. It was the first time in my life that anyone had asked me if I was transgender, and it was the first time I was really thinking about it. I had to take a week off work. I just couldn't be there during this time while I was stressing and worrying about the answer. I had been having panic attacks at my desk. I couldn't sit there with this tight anxiety in my chest with my vaguely transphobic colleagues making jokes. Even though they didn't know anything, they somehow picked that exact moment to start making jokes about an attractive female member of staff who'd gone off sick, and they were joking about, what if she came back as a man? Wouldn't that be so funny? Like, no joke there, just an inherent, trans people are ridiculous. And it was just too much. I had to take the week off, but I couldn't explain anything to my manager. I didn't have the words, I wasn't ready. And also I kind of landed on it's not any of your business. I told them I had something going on that meant I couldn't be here and that I just needed the time. And they gave it to me, which was incredibly appreciated. My manager was amazing about the whole thing. She didn't push for details. She was just concerned and hoped that I was going to be okay. God, I bet she'd be surprised if she ever saw this, that this is what that was about, but she handled it perfectly without knowing. During that week, I basically panicked the whole time and just tried to read everything I could about being transgender, what it meant, what it was like, to just try and get informed about something I really still didn't know anything about. I made an appointment at that time with a lovely counsellor who, even though I was still so scared and ashamed, was just amazing at trying to talk me through it. For the first few sessions, I couldn't even say the words transgender or cross-dressing. I was just that afraid, but I knew I needed to talk to someone about this, that I couldn't just let this lie. We talk about my childhood and some of the things that I was repressing. We sort of unpicked it. I remember a lot of the things that I felt, a lot of the things that I said, a lot of stuff that I hadn't thought about in so long that were all starting to sort of slot into place and take a little bit of shape. Gradually just unpicking at things to try and understand who I am, as well as going over coping strategies for when it all gets too much, because I was still quite overwhelmed at this point. This wasn't a very quick process. It took about 7 months of weekly sessions. I was so scared throughout all of this. Fear was definitely the presiding emotion. It upset me a lot. And I was so scared of being transgender. I did not want to be this. I was so afraid that it would turn out that I was trans and that was something I couldn't even comprehend dealing with. I didn't want it to be true. The main benefit from counselling for me was getting to the point where I'm not as ashamed about even the potential anymore. Instead of being ashamed that I was transgender, I was feeling shame about the potential of being transgender, and that wasn't letting me see things clearly. So getting over that hurdle was very, very key for me. I'm still friends with the women from university. We're still quite close. They're the first 2 people outside of my partner that I tell that I'm questioning my gender, that I've got things going on, that I'm like, I don't know who I am and I'm trying to work it out. They're both just so incredible and so there for me. One of them says something that even now still sticks with me. She said she'd felt like I was always searching for something that I hadn't found. It was so true, because I was looking for this all along and I hadn't found it yet. I hadn't found the words to express it and describe it. But she was right, I'd been looking for this all along. Through this time, my ex stayed with me, which I'm hugely grateful for, but the fact that I'm now referring to her as my ex kind of gives it away. It all came to an end in October 2017 when I sat down and said, yes, I am transgender. I'd been browsing Reddit and I was just looking at the trans subs, and it just hit me so hard. I just had to say it to her, to someone, to anyone. I am transgender. I just knew it was true. And the second that sort of clicked, it just shifted everything else into focus, and I knew it had always been true. I could just see that so clearly. I was scared, so scared, and so uncertain about what the future would be. But I was finally not ashamed of the things that I wanted, and I wasn't ashamed of the potential of being transgender anymore. And with that gone, I wasn't ashamed of myself. And in that instance, I finally knew who I was. And I wasn't ashamed about that. So I had to say something. I just had to say it. So we broke up. Yeah, it had to happen for us. My gender identity, being a woman, isn't compatible with her sexuality, being into men. It drew a line under a relationship that had meant a lot to the both of us. There wasn't any other option. I stepped back from the previous channel, and she released a very emotional and moving video, Things Are Gonna Change, where she let our subscriber base know that we'd broken up, which was heartbreaking to see that go out and to just see the comments pouring in and to just be reminded of everything that you've lost. It was a very emotional time for the both of us. It surprised a lot of our audience. For them, it had come out of the blue. Things were fine and then they weren't, and neither of us were talking about it. While it was out of the blue for them, we'd been dealing with this for months on end, and it had finally reached its conclusion. We couldn't and didn't want to say anything further at this point because I was still so scared of actually coming out. We didn't want to say anything, it wasn't appropriate time, so we just left it as an amicable breakup and didn't go into the details. My family didn't even know at this point. They didn't know that I'd been questioning, they didn't know that I'd come to the answer that I'm a transgender woman. I bought hormones immediately on the internet because I already knew that the NHS was slow and I wanted to have access to that as soon as possible. So I ordered those online. They just sort of sat in my drawer for a while. I'd made up a week's worth of dosage and put it in a pill box already just so that I could go. I needed to feel like I had some plan in place, even if I didn't act on it straight away. Before I took the HRT, I wanted to come out to my parents. So I came out to my mum in person. We cried on both sides a little bit. Then I knew I wanted to come out to my dad as well. For some reason, for no particular reason, really. I just was a lot more worried about that. So I did that via email because I'm still finding it very hard to talk about out loud. And I wanted to make sure that I really had everything down on paper that I wanted to say. He took it very, very well as well. Both of my parents were completely amazing. I couldn't have asked for a better response from either of them. I started taking HRT on November 22nd, 2017. I start with quite a low dose initially. I want to make sure that I'm doing this slowly, not rushing into anything. Gradually, I up my dose a little bit to more sort of normal doses, checking my levels with blood tests. But from there, it's kind of just a waiting game, just letting HRT do what it needs to do. I come out to more people slowly over time. By June 2018, I'm out to my workplace and out on Facebook. By November 2018, I come out on Twitter and Instagram. My extended family know at this point, as well as all of the people that used to subscribe to me. They're now aware of what's been going on. And during this time, I have such a lovely outpouring of support from people I've never met and don't know personally, but just them telling me how proud they were of me was incredible. So supportive, so there for me, just amazing. I've been so fortunate with the responses that I've had and the incredible support network that I've got in place. And now we're kind of all caught up to real time. I've been on HRT for 470 days. I've had a huge amount of changes, but none more important than obvious than my mood and my mental health. I feel great, and I feel whole, and I feel like me. I'm happy in a way I didn't realize I was missing before. When I was carrying this around with me all day and not realizing what it meant, it felt like something I was just used to. It was just there and it was just part of me. And now I've put that burden down. I feel so much better. I have a long way to go, and I still have my bad days, as anyone that follows me on Instagram will know. But on the whole, I feel good and I know I can do this. So I'm starting this channel to share this journey with anyone who will listen. Whether you're transgender and know it, whether you're trans and questioning, whether you're questioning but not trans, whether you're cisgender and just interested, it doesn't matter. I just want to share this with everyone. I hope this whole thing can illuminate what the trans experience is like a little more. We're still regarded as fairly mysterious, and when you come out to people, the first thing that they'll often realize is that they don't actually know anything about trans people. They don't know anything about what this is like. My next milestone is my gender identity clinic referral. I've been to see my GP and sent off the referral to the GIC. Now I just have to wait. The wait time is about 2 years from when you send it off, which was January. I am looking at going privately in parallel to that to just try and get this process along. But whatever I decide, I'm in it for the long haul now. I'm gonna take everything as it comes and share it all with you. I know I have my bad days, I still have my anxieties and my worries about the future, but I know I can do this and you're gonna see it. Thank you for watching and listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this video. If you have any comments or questions, stick them down below and then we'll answer them. See you next week. Bye.